Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda. We're going to proceed with the program this morning, and we're going to have Reverend Bernette Jones lead us in a meditation. And so I'll turn the mic over to you, Reverend Jones.
Thank you. Greetings and blessings. I greet you in a consciousness of love, a consciousness of great joy that we are gathered here doing this once again, a consciousness of peace, and a consciousness of enlightenment. This morning in our meditation, I want to, before we start, just acknowledge you for being here by right of your consciousness for something that is so important and significant for us at this time. And so I also want to acknowledge Ron Hantz, who over many years, as a conscious, strategic thought leader, has taken his spiritual assignment to keep this moving. So let us become still and just relax right where you are, turning your attention away from the outer world of effects and breathing and turning within, turning your awareness within. There's a divine presence that we're all a part of. And this morning we meditate and we reflect and we open ourselves to receive the divine inspiration that lays a solid foundation for the work and the movement that we are about. The agenda, the Black agenda for a consciousness movement. We give thanks. We open ourselves to receive the inspiration as we lay the cornerstones and the foundation for this movement, as we accept our divine assignment. And so let us anchor ourselves into the divine presence as we lay the spiritual cornerstone in building a pyramid in our own consciousness that will be lasting and enduring and stable and sustainable and long term. Let us anchor and put in place the spiritual cornerstone by which we honor the truth of being. We honor that we are indeed spiritual beings having a human experience. We lay the cornerstone for the infinite wisdom of the omnipresence that is guiding and directing this movement through us. We breathe. We open ourselves to lay the cornerstone of culture, the collective consciousness in honoring our sacred heritage, we breathe as we place this cornerstone in place. For by it we honor the principles, we honor the practices, we honor the ways of being through right thinking, right speaking, right feelings, right actions, and right reactions. And we breathe deeply. As we know, this cornerstone of culture is given to us by our ancestors. We continue to breathe in and let go of anything that is a barrier or a hindrance as we place the cornerstone of education. We breathe. The cornerstone of honoring our ability to understand, our ability to gain knowledge, our ability to discover ourselves and all that we need to know and to understand to fulfill this divine vision. We honor this cornerstone of education as our preparation for the pyramid that we are building in consciousness. And finally, we lay the cornerstone of economics, prosperity, abundance, sustainability, resources, thriving. Anchoring into the divine fulfillment of what is already provided within us to emerge, to grow, to serve, to give of ourselves the best, and to receive abundantly the best. We contemplate and consider that we are the right people at the right time with the right consciousness to move this divine assignment from the invisible into the manifest forms that it will take through us and as us. And we give thanks. We are so grateful. We return now to this time and this space and this place. This outer sanctuary that reflects our inner sanctuary. And when you are ready, open your eyes and your heart and your mind. To receive and to give, and then to receive again. The truth of being for why we are here. It is done. It is so. And so it is.
Well, good morning again to you. All right. Well, we're here. We have arrived. Thank you, Reverend Bernette, for the meditation, leading us in conscious thought. Thank you. So, I want to have a conversation this morning with you as I open this conference. And I want to have a conversation with you about why we're here and what this conference stands for. So, 2 days ago, we acknowledged the 54th day on the assassination of Dr. King, the drum major, the inspirational spiritual leader who led us for many years in awakening us to what our true identity was as people. But also, 54 years ago, there was a convening in Washington, D.C. that preceded Dr. King. It was called the Poor People's Campaign. And so I want to talk a little bit about that Poor People's Campaign, but I just want to home in on things that Dr. King espoused during his life here in the physical sense. He spoke about justice, economic justice, human rights. And he spoke up against a war that was occurring in his country, a war that was sending poor black men, poor white men off to fight in a country and not having any whereabouts of why they were fighting. But he stood on his principle of why he opposed that war. And so I'm just reminded that today that I stand in the wake of his principles around what he saw and what he saw in us as people. He saw the goodness. And he espoused that through his work here and the work that he left here. So I want to just, take a moment just to honor Dr. King and what he brought into the space and what he's left in the space for us to grow, because he left a lot for us to grow on and to grow towards. All right? So as I'm reminded about Dr. King's journey, I'm reminded about the work that he left that continued on after his assassination. And that was the work of the Poor People's Campaign. Now, many of you are, unless you're historians or maybe too young to remember that campaign, but I do, because I was a teenager at the time. And I remember the stories of the downpour and the rain and how they were trying to organize. But they did organize. They did create a movement. And so out of that movement came the Poor People's Development Foundation. And so let me just take you down the road in terms of what I learned over the last year about the Poor People's Development Foundation. It was birthed out of the Poor People's Campaign by Bernard Ruskin and Cornelius Cornbread Givens. Now, Bernard Ruskin, you might be familiar with him because he was one of the organizers of the '63 March on Washington. But Cornelius Cornbread Givens was unknown in many respects to the work that he put down and the work that he promoted. And so what they did in '68 during that rainy 4 days in April, they organized a movement to share the work of cooperatives. They had came to the understanding that cooperatives were an instrumental factor in promoting social and economic power in low-income neighborhoods and among poor people. So for 10 years, they worked at developing that foundation. And I say the 10 years because between '68 and '78, they worked to develop the foundation in terms of its outward work. So they worked with farmers in the South to bring produce up into the northern markets. They did trainings around cooperatives up and along the eastern seaboard. And they organized labor movement, religious movement, everyday people to support the work that they were envisioning around these cooperatives and what cooperatives could do. So in 1978, they mobilized a national movement to establish a national cooperative bank. They saw this as the pinnacle of their work in terms of bringing not just financial resources to support the cooperatives, but also provide training and education on cooperatives. So in '78, they were able to mobilize a wide range of supporters. As I said earlier, religious supporters, unions, everyday individuals from communities. And so they were able to get past a piece of legislation that founded the National Consumer Cooperative Bank, and which is still the only nationally chartered bank here in the United States that deals with cooperatives. And so that was a monumental effort on their part. Now, what is not known is that the National Consumer Cooperative Bank, to which they were instrumental in founding in '78, changed its name. changed its name to the National Cooperative Bank. Does that ring a bell, the National Cooperative Bank, to any of you? Yeah. So this bank was instrumental in funding the work of cooperatives here in the District of Columbia, where I now reside, and other low-income communities. But somewhere along the line, along time, the work of the bank took a different pathway. It took a different pathway. So in my research, as I was researching the formation of this conference, this is how I stumbled on this untold story. And it's an untold story because if you go to the National Cooperative Bank website, you won't hear or read any mention of the civil rights efforts to establish the bank, which is a travesty because it's a rich story that should be told. And but nevertheless, it hasn't been told. And so the reason I'm bringing this up because this conference was the original conference that the Poor People's Development Foundation last adjourned. And it was the National Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda. So we take no credit, me meaning the organization that I am responsible for heading, the Network for the Development Conscious Community, we take no ownership of the name of this conference. What we do is try to take ownership of expounding and expanding the work of the National Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda that was started by the Poor People's Development Foundation. So I share this story because in the wake of George Floyd's murder, we saw a lot of stories being uncovered around Black history. That some of them we knew and some of them we didn't know all the facts around. And this happened to be one of the stories that I just happened to uncover and shared with the foundation, with the bank. And I'm still in a tough place with them because I'm still advocating the fact that they need to share this story openly on their website and share this story openly, publicly, about their existence and how it came to be. So I share this with you because I think it's important that you know the history as I come to understand it and acknowledge it, and so that maybe that collectively we can promote or advocate for the bank to promote this story about the Poor People's Development Foundation, because it was a monumental effort on their part to even think that they could start a national chartered bank. But they were able to do it. So I just wanted to share that story with you this morning. So this brings us around to where we are today. Reverend shared with us our right of consciousness. And by right of consciousness, we are here in this divine time for a divine purpose. We are here in this divine time for a divine purpose. And that purpose is to address the inequalities that we are experiencing ourselves and the inequalities that we know that are existing in this country today. 2 days ago, let me just go to my notes here. 2 days ago, Nicole Hannah Jones spoke at the UN. Is anyone familiar with what she shared? Well, let me just paraphrase what she shared. She shared the story that she had been researching on the 1619 project. And she was asked to come and speak to the UN on resilience. And she shared her story looking back over the history of slavery in terms of the resilience, of slaves. The fact that, slavery didn't kill the spirit of the slave or the enslaved. And she shared the story that they were fought back over many years in terms of just resisting being enslaved. And so she posed a question in terms of the denial of the U.S. And the denial really about the institution of slavery and its legacy here in the country. She shared the fact that we are still living in the wake of enslavement. We're still living in the wake of enslavement. Where we find that 1/10 of the wealth of black folks equals in comparison to white wealth. We have 1/10 of the wealth. And she shared the obligation to repair what had been done in terms of the travesties of slavery. And so she also shared her thoughts around reparations. And now I don't know where your thoughts are about reparations, but I do have a opinion that reparations should be financial. And without reparations, it's really hard to imagine the repair that needs to take place in this country. So the work we're doing here in terms of building cooperatives is really about reparations as well. It's about bringing wholeness into our communities. Not only just economic wholeness, but spiritual, conscious wholeness. Because working in cooperatives is just not about the money, it's really about building the community. It's about building a sense of pride, a sense of self-worth. And so we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And I'm counting on each of you. See, because, I may not look, but I am kind of old. And my vision and mission is to really pass the work that I've been doing on to the next generation of thought leaders, which is you, which is many of you. And so a lot of us who have been doing this work are holding the space, waiting for you to arrive, waiting for you to take up the mantle of the work. Because we know that the elders bring wisdom, but elders sometimes don't bring the energy. And so we need to energize this movement around black cooperatives. And so I want to just acknowledge at this time that, of the folks who I've been working with for the last probably 10 months now, on bringing this forum to you. And I'd be remiss if I couldn't remember everybody's name, but I'm going to try to. Mavery Davis, Asada Riches, Lakeisha Wolf, yeah. And there's just there are more people who contributed to this whole creating this movement. And that's what we have really envisioned. Reverend spoke about a movement of consciousness, and we're working on inviting you into this movement, inviting you to share your thoughts, inviting you to share your feelings, your intellect, because all this is needed if we're going to overcome and really create a world that's equitable for everyone, where everyone can feel and know that they are contributing and being held in a worthwhile way. And so this is important for me. It's been my life passion for the last 30 years plus, working in community development, working on behalf of Black folks, working sometimes tirelessly, and sometimes facing criticism. And you can face criticism when you do the right thing. And so it hasn't thwarted my enthusiasm. As a matter of fact, it's inspired me to even reach higher, dig deeper. And so I wanted to be able to share this with you and across the table to come on board and join us as we work towards solutions and outcomes that we can say that we are benefiting our people. And not just Black people. Let me just say that too, because I had some conversation with my white colleagues and about attending this conference, because yeah, it's a Black conference. No, well, it's a Black conference, but there's something that you can learn from it. It's something that you need to hear that can shift your thinking so that you can shift the thinking of others. See, that's what it's about. So you come, you learn, and you take it back and share it with those who are unlearned. And so that you can help elevate their consciousness. Because I'm a firm believer that this is all about consciousness, that what we're striving to create. When I founded this organization 7 years ago, I came back into the space a little differently than I had previously left the space, because I had been on my own spiritual journey, but I never aligned my spiritual work with the work that I was doing in community. I never aligned it. And then I had an aha moment 7 years ago to say that I had to come back into the space and thread my spiritual work, my principle-driven work, inside of this work around building community. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years. Again, it has been rewarding and it has been challenging. Because when you talk consciousness and you use words like consciousness and enlightenment, people sort of ask you, well, what does that mean? Well, simply put, it is what it is. Consciousness is what it is. It's who you are. It's how you show up. It's how you demonstrate yourself. And through consciousness, it's a growing process because no one is the same person they were yesterday. So we all are growing exponentially through the moments of our experiences. But we have to dig deep within ourselves to really explore what those experiences mean to us, how they're going to impact us, and how can we use them to impact others. So here we are on this day, and we're going to have 3 days of wonderful presentations by presenters, but also too, I want to see at the end of the 3 days awareness that we all recognize that we all are in this together. That we all are in this together. And so it takes sometimes, knowing that my idea may not be the idea that drives the thought of the day, but doesn't mean that I don't participate in sharing and acknowledging the majority thought that may be existing. So yeah. So we're here. We're here. You're here by divine purpose, folks. I want you to know that. You're here. And you're here to be a change agent. Someone asked me, well, how many people are coming? Well, my thought was, whoever was supposed to be here will be here. That's how I look at it. Spiritually. Whoever's supposed to be here is going to be here. And so you're here. And others will come and join. And so we're going to enjoy this time that we have to really sit down and challenge ourselves around growth, around development, around the difference of ideas. Because, again, we all don't have to agree to be in agreement. Hear me. We all don't have to agree to be in agreement. So I'm looking forward to conversing with all of you. I hope that you pull me up and have a conversation with me, because I'm going to try my best to get around and talk to everyone here. And at the end of the day, it's really about us coming together, us sharing in this unfoldment, because it is a spiritual unfoldment that we're on. And then, most importantly, I will say this here, that nothing happens by accident. Everything happens in divine order and for divine purpose. So yeah. So let me just share with you this map up here, and I hope you can see it. Because this is an indication where you came from. So we're seeing from the far west coast in Las Vegas and California, and up into the Midwest, in Wisconsin, up in Illinois, down south to Texas, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, New York State, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and I think Massachusetts. So you come from all walks of life, from all different spaces. And I think that is remarkable. And you need to give yourselves a hand, because yeah. And I'd like to thank Asada Richards for putting this map together. I provided her the data, and she plotted it and showed it here. And I hope to leave it up and for you just to take note of where you come from, what you bring into the space. Yeah. Yeah. So let me just go through, at least preview some of the work that's going to take place. On tomorrow, we have a Sankofa Circle that we're opening up with tomorrow. And I'd like to thank Lakeisha Wolf for leading us to implement that as a part of this discussion. Yes. Yeah. And it was a awakening for me to go through the process, and I'm quite sure you'll feel the same way as we go through the process of asking ourselves the question: why are we here? Why are we here? What do you hope to gain by this experience? All right. On Friday, Omar Ferreira is going to lead us on a discussion on the diaspora and the work of cooperatives in the diaspora. Because in just like this map here shows us all from all walks of work, all walks of life here in the U.S., we know that cooperatives are worldwide. They're in the Caribbean, they're in Africa, they're in Europe. And so he's going to take us through particularly a discussion on Marcus Garvey and his thoughts around cooperatives. So I'm looking forward to his presentation and the presentation of the presenters with him on that discussion around the diaspora and how important it has been in terms of elevating the work around cooperatives. And so those are the two major symposiums where we all share in. But then there's a host of other trainings that we've provided, because I'm convinced that, that we as people and organizers and workers need to have skills. We need to really work on skill sets. And so I'm hoping that throughout these next days that there'll be something that you will find useful that you can take back to your community. Something useful that you can take back to your community. And so we have wonderful sessions, and I'm interested in the one on marijuana, cannabis rather. Yeah, because I, having been a cannabis user way back in my early days, and now seeing the shift around the herb itself, it's really something how black men and black folks were incarcerated in huge numbers, and now they take the same product and marketing it out and growing state economies on growth. So it's really interesting, but it's also interesting the fact that we are been consumers in the space, but we need to be producers. We need to be producers, and so I'm hoping that the presentations that are being done are going to lead us to maybe looking at how we can develop cannabis industry and expand ourselves in that space, because it is a growing industry now. It's a growing industry. Mm-hmm. Huh? Mm-hmm.
Being viewed right now, it probably will go to the Justice Department. I was part of that process, and we did not get a chance to really participate because we didn't have other requirements that other folks had.
Yeah.
It's a big thing right now.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing shifts all around the country in terms of cannabis, and because one thing we do know about this country, if there's money to be made, if there's money to be made, you best believe the policies will shift. So yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds, and we know one thing: it's only going up and it's only increasing. So yeah, so I think I've said enough. Yeah. No, but anyway, this conference is really, again, it's just a testimony to the resilience and of individuals to want to see change. I do want to just acknowledge that some of the other players who were instrumental in providing resources for this conference. You can see them in the back of your program book, the sponsors, and so I do want to just acknowledge all of them who contributed to making this event possible. Because without support of sponsors and supporters, it's very difficult to do the work that we do. So I do want to just acknowledge that the folks did contribute and make this a worthwhile event. Hey, Jeremy. Yeah. So take time to meet someone that you didn't know. That's really a sign of growth too. Reach out to find out what your neighbor's doing in another state, another county. Because with that comes, that's a part of consciousness as well. Being able to extend yourself. So we are hitting. Let me do a time check. About 9:30. We're going to start the next session. The sessions at 10 o'clock. I'll give you some time to refresh yourselves with some coffee, some teas, and some other edibles. Well, I don't know if those are kind of out there, but anyway, something to eat then. All right. Oh goodness. Wow. I forgot what I was saying there. Yeah, that's right. Tournament edibles too. Yeah. So anyway, let's take the next half an hour. Go ahead and mingle. Again, refresh yourselves. Take care of your bodily needs, and all the sessions are taking place in the parlors to my right. All right. So there's all start at 10 o'clock, and again, I welcome all of you in the name and nature of the consciousness, and let's have a great time. All right?